This is chapter 4, daily exercise 1, right? All right, so write a Python program that takes the list, this list consisting of both strings and integers, right? Concatenates all the items in the list into a single string and prints out the string. So it becomes business to client for all, right? So clearly you're going to have to, and so if you look at the actual, do I want to see preview? Right, I give you part of the code, which is result equals and then an empty string. By the way, this is how you give an empty string, right? You just give a quote and a quote, two double quotes with no spaces. Okay, so this is an empty string. Now, can somebody tell me why I did this?
Because you're gonna put that empty string as a result, like that's gonna be at the end of the. That's gonna be placed inside the.
So true. So the first item in that list, I'm going to concatenate to that empty string, right? I can't concatenate, so I need this starting string to be able to concatenate, right? In other words, otherwise I'll have to take business first and then try to concatenate 2 to it, right? But the easiest way to do that is to initialize a variable to the empty string, just like I have it right here, right? Let me see if I can make this bigger, right? So just like I have it right here, right? And now I can take this list, take the first item in this list and concatenate it to result. Okay? Then grab the second item. In this case, this second item is what? What type?
An integer.
It's an integer, right? So I can't concatenate an integer to a string. So what do I have to do to that integer?
Turn it into a string.
Right. So in fact, I can turn a string into a string. I don't do anything. It's just a string, right? So I might as well make sure that all the items that in the list I convert to a string, and before I concatenate, right? So I'm going to loop through this. Each item, I'm going to convert it to a string, and I'm going to concatenate it to result. And so what I should end up with after I'm done through looping is I should end up with a string that consists of all these items in one string. Okay? Does that help any at all? Yes or no? Tell me.
Yes.
Yes.
Anybody no? And it's okay to say no.
So confused.
All right, so let me give an example right now, okay? So here I am on idle on the REPL, right? I'm just gonna give you an example. So if I want to concatenate a bunch of strings, right? The best way to do that is, and I'm gonna use result as the same thing, right? I'm gonna assign the empty string to result. So I just say quote, quote, right? That's the empty string, okay? Empty in the sense that there are no characters, but it's still a string. Okay, so if I asked what result is, it's the empty string. If I asked for the type of result, it's a string. Okay, everybody good with that so far? All right, so now look, if I want to concatenate to result, whatever's in result right now, whatever's stored in result, right? If I want to concatenate the word, I don't know, superhero, or it's just super, right? The word super, okay? Then what I would do is but I want to store the result back in result. I mean, I want to store the concatenation back in result. So the way you always do that is you take result equals result plus, right, super. Okay, so what am I saying here? I'm saying take whatever the existing value of result is right now, which is the empty string, right? And concatenate to it super, so basically the result will be super, right? And then I'm going to assign that back to result. So I'm going to blow away the empty string, and I'm going to now replace it with this new string, which is a concatenation of what was in result before plus super, right? So if I do that, now if I ask what's in result, you'll see that it's super, okay? If I now want to concatenate and add to it hero, I would say result equals result plus hero. And the reason I'm doing result equals result plus hero is because I wanted to take whatever is in result right now, whatever highlighted, right? I want to add or concatenate to it the word hero, sorry, right? And then the result, I want it to store back in result. Sorry, there's a lot of result words here, right? So now if I ask what is result, you'll see that now result is superhero. Does that help? Okay. All right. So that's basically the formula here, except you're going to have to put it into a loop. Okay. All right. We're going to do some of that today in the let me see. In Skill Builder 5. What I need to do before everybody goes to Skill Builder 5, I think I need to move these around a little bit. So let's leave it there like that. Okay, so go to Recitation, Skill Builder 5. You have two problems in Skill Builder 5. Okay, the first one requires an understanding of, I don't want that. That's okay. No, I don't want solution either, show. Okay. All right. The first one, I need to start over again. Here we go. Okay, so the first one requires a knowledge about random, right? So there's this import random. So what's the first thing we're going to do? Somebody tell me what's the first thing we do?
The first thing we do would be the this is creating the loop, so it would be like the for statement.
Okay, but how do you don't, so okay. So let me step back a second. Let's read the problem, right? So everybody open the Skill Builder 5. Can you get to it? You good?
Yeah.
Okay. So write a Python program that generates n random integers between 0 and 100 inclusively, right? So that includes, in other words, it includes 0 and 100. The program should calculate the average of these numbers and store the result in a variable called average. Okay? The program should finally print the number of integers generated and the average separated by a space. In other words, it prints, you know, if you select, so you notice that you're inputting, right? So if you said, I want 100 integers generated, right? It'll print 100 and then whatever the average is, separated by space. Okay? So what you'll notice are 3 lines here, and then I always say, do not touch the code above, add your code after this line, because some of you have a habit of going and deleting code, okay? So those 3 lines you're not allowed to touch, all right? So that means you have to look at these 3 lines. One of them is import, random. The other one is num of integers equals int input, right? So I'm getting an input from the user, and I'm converting that to an integer, right? That's going to tell me the number of integers to generate, okay? And then I have this variable called sum equals 0. Why do you think I have the sum equals 0?
Because that's what it starts off as, and then it changes.
Well, tell me what's the problem asking you to do? To calculate what?
The average.
The average. How do you calculate the average?
The sum of the numbers divided by however many numbers.
Okay, exactly, right? So sum is going to hold what?
The numbers you input?
No, the numbers you generate. So that's the point of random, right? So the number I input is how many numbers we're going to add up, right? So what random will do is it's able to generate as many numbers as you want, right? And it will generate random numbers for you, right? So let's say you ask it, you say you want it to generate 10 numbers, right? What it'll do is, and you're going to do this, you're going to generate 10 numbers, you're going to add up those 10 numbers, and then you're going to divide by the number of integers, right? Then those 10. So I add up those 10, divide by 10. Does it make sense? And so average, you're going to have to create a variable called average that has basically calculates the average of these numbers, right? So let me explain what random does. And so we'll talk a little bit about how to do this. Now, the question I asked initially was, what's the first thing to do in this problem? Right? Well, you don't know how to generate random numbers, correct? But you do see that the first line there says input random. What does that mean?
Like, isn't it similar to like how we import turtle?
Yeah. So that
Python
means that's a module, correct? So what did I talk about yesterday about when you see a module and you don't know what that module does? What do?
look it up on python.org.
Right. So there we go. Let's go. Let's go. Everybody go to python.org. That's for turtle. I don't want turtle. Right. You're going to go python.org. You're going to go to documentation, Python docs. You're going to go down to library reference. And you're going to find where the random module is. You can do, again, Control F or Alt F or Command F if you're in Mac, and type in random. And you'll see that one of the items here is the random, which says generate a pseudo-random number, pseudo-random numbers. The reason why they call them pseudo-random numbers is because it's not a truly random generator. In other words, at some point, some of these random generators actually repeat the sequence. They'll generate random numbers for a while, and then after that they repeat. But they're pretty good random number generators, and so they'll go for quite a bit. All right. So a random number generator generally has some kind of a seed that it starts to generate numbers, and the way they do it is through some multiplication process. Okay, and then they take some number of digits out of that. That's not really important. Okay. What's important is that with this random generator, there's several things you can do. These are the functions for integers, for example. For example, I can use random.randrange and I give it a value, the stop value, and it'll generate a number between 0 and stop, but not including stop. Okay, so what does that mean? So if I tell it random.randrange 100, it'll generate a number between 0 and 99 inclusive, right? But not 100. So I can get a random number between 0 and 99 inclusively, okay? And so that's the way I can generate these random numbers. I can also give it a start and stop value and then a step. So if I tell it generate a number between 100 and 200 and give a step, any number between that's, step of 2, forget about step for now. So if I tell it between 100 and 200, it'll generate a number that includes 100 and 199, but not 200. Okay, but any random number. So let's see how that works. So if you open up idle, right? The first thing, and you can use the REPL, by the way, and say import random. Okay, and then if I say random.randrange, and then give a number like 100, it'll return 22. If I call that again and run it, now I get 33. If I do it again, I get 92. So you can see it's generating random numbers for me. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Jaden Wilson, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, good. So that's randrange. If I wanted to, but this will just generate numbers between 0 and 199 inclusively. So if I wanted to generate 100 to 300, but not including 300, I would give the following. So now you can see it's going to start generating numbers in that range. Every time I run it, it gives me a different number, right? Sometimes it might repeat, but that's something that would be probabilistically small to happen. Okay, does that make sense? So now I have a way of generating numbers between a certain value and another value. Okay, there's also other functions in here like randint. So randint will generate a number between A and B, including A and B, which is the one I like to use, right? Because it's the same as randrange A comma B plus 1, right? Because remember, rand range doesn't include the stop number, right? It includes one less than the stop number. So they provide this rand int, which is similar to rand range, except it's the same as rand range a comma b plus 1. Okay, that's the one I usually use. So again, if I use that, I can generate some random numbers. So here I am. I'm going to say rand. Okay, rand int. Sorry, random dot rand int, and then give a number. So if I give 1 comma 5, right? Then this will generate numbers like, and it'll include 1. So you should end up getting 1 at some point. So now here, notice it did 4, 3, 3, and you'll get more repetition because the range of numbers that it's generating from is a lot less. Here's 1, right? There's 1. And at some point, if you keep going, there's 5, right? So in this case, it'll include 5 as well. Okay. So if you want to include the ending value, then use rand int. Or use rand range and then do 5 plus 1 or whatever, right? So it's up to you how you want to use it. But they basically do the same thing. Now there's other functions in here which we're not going to get into. But there's a choice where if you give it a sequence, it'll return a random element from that sequence. And then that's something we can learn about later, a little bit later. There are some warnings against using some of these other functions, but the ones that we'll focus on are the ones that generate random integers for us. You have functions that can generate values, say, between 0 and 1. You can do that, right? So there's a function called uniform that'll give you a uniform value, a uniform distribution of numbers between A and B. Okay, and these are not integer value. Oh, random floating point number, right? So if I wanted to generate a number between 0 and 1, right, inclusively, I would use the uniform function. So here's an example. If I say random.uniform 1 comma 2, I'll get any number between 1 and 2, right? But it's but it's a floating point, not an integer. Okay. So in some cases, I do want to generate those kind of numbers. All right. So that's a quick intro to this. You should read a little bit more into these. But the first thing, whenever you see a module that you've never seen before, your first thing to do is to go look it up. And now these are all built-in modules. They're part of the standard library. Sometimes you have modules that are included that are third-party modules, which then you have to go and find the web page or the blog where that module is documented so that you can use it. Okay, sounds good? Everybody understand how the random module works?
Yes.
Okay, so going back to the skill builder, let's look at that. So now your job is to first write a program that generates n random integers between 0 and 100 inclusively. So your first thing is you don't want to code this here. You want to take this, copy it, and either do it in idle or do it where?
Python tutor.
Yes, but with Python tutor, the issue is that you have to make sure that you don't use large numbers, that you don't have large loops. Okay, so if you try to do too many loops, Python tutor is going to tell you, we can't really do that because it takes up a lot of resources. Okay, so if you want to check it out with a lot of numbers, which I don't recommend when you're first coding this, stick to like something like around 10 loops, 10 iterations, right? So we're going to copy this. We're going to go to, well, let's start with pythontutor.org. So here's pythontutor.org. I'm going to copy the code in here. Okay. All right. So now we have that. So when I run this, it's going to ask me to enter the number of integers to generate, and that you need to keep it down to like 10 and stuff, right? So your first job really is to generate those numbers and maybe just print them out just so you know that you're generating the numbers. Does that make sense? Yes. Somebody say yes.
Yes.
Okay. So the first job here, so if you look at the problem, again, always break the problem down into pieces, right? It says write a program that generates n random integers between 0 and 100 inclusively. The program should calculate the average of these integers and store the result in a variable called average, right? So there's multiple pieces here going on. One is generate the numbers, then take these numbers and calculate the average of them. Okay, does everybody see that there's two pieces here?
Yes.
Okay, so instead of trying to work both, focus on first generating the random numbers, right? So that's why we copied this code and went over to pythontutor.org and said, okay, how do I generate these numbers? Given if you give me, you know, if I input 10, I need to generate 10 numbers and print them out. And if you give me 20, I need to generate 20 numbers and print them out. Clear? Okay. So that's your focus first, right? And clearly you have to, it says you need, oh, and that's not it. It says that you have to, the program should find, okay. Well, it doesn't say, but you should use a loop. Okay, I'll let you know that. You're going to use a loop, right? Now, you may have forgotten this, but we use the range function. So that range function is going to come in handy because that tells you you're going to use the range function to generate how many times you iterate. Okay? So I've given you all the elements there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you in breakout sessions. I'm going to have you discuss how you're going to do this, right? Don't start coding. Figure out all these elements and how they're going to fit together. All right? You guys ready? Okay. I just want to kind of discuss one thing before we go back into looking at this. So what a lot of you are forgetting, and you keep forgetting certain things we've done. So one of the things we've done in the past was use the range function. In fact, the first time I introduced for loops for you, right, we talked about what the range function. When I say range for, it actually generates numbers between zero, in order, right? It goes 0, 1, 2, 3, right? Because the range function gives all the numbers or all the integers from 0 to whatever the number is, in this case 4, but not including 4. So range 4 will generate 0, 1, 2, and 3, 4 numbers. Okay. Now, when I use that in a for loop, right? So if I use for count in range 4, right? Colon, and then I print count, right? What you'll see is it'll actually generate 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3. Now, I don't have to use this. I don't have to use the values being generated. I just need it to, I'm using it here to basically loop, right? So that's why it's important to use a range in this case, because if you have num of integers, right, you can use that to generate how many times you need to iterate, right? How many times you need to loop. And then inside the loop, you can use the either randint, right? Random.randint or random.randrange to generate the random number for yourself. Okay. So does that help a little bit more? Because some of you are confused about how to use this, but you know, if I have a variable like num, okay, and I set it to 6, right? And num, I want num to control how many times I loop, right? So then I can use it for count in range num, right? I pass num to range, right? And now when I print count, it prints 0 to 5, right? If I change num to 20, right? If I change num to 20, and now I rerun this code, it'll now print 0 to 19. Okay, so that's the power of using a variable, right? I can modify that variable, rerun that code, and now it will do exactly what I tell it to do, right? So that's the point of this. So utilize all the tools that you're learning. You have to remember this stuff, and you have to, and the reason I say in this sense remember is understand it so that you're able to retain it. Understanding helps you in retention, right? In retaining information. If you want to memorize and you don't have photographic memory, memorization, it will not be retained. okay? So you have to retain the information, okay? Does that help a little bit?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna send you back into the breakout room, except this time, you're not only gonna do this, but I want you to finish this up. So I want you to also, once you're able to generate those random numbers, right? To also add those random numbers up and then calculate the average by dividing by number of integers, right? You have to divide by number of integers because that's how many you generated, right? That's what the information of how many things you're adding up, okay? All right, ready to go back into breakout? Any questions before we go in? Okay, welcome back, everybody. So we're at the end of the recitation session. I just want to just note that you have to use the range function in the way that we've used it in the past, and you're going to use, you're basically going to pass to the range function the number of integers you want to generate. Okay, so that loop, it then tells it to count that many times, so it'll actually iterate and generate that many loops. If you're not understanding how range works and how the loop works, you will have a problem with this particular question. Okay. Let me just, before we leave, I wanted to mention and talk about the next question. So you have a week on that one. I strongly recommend that you get with a tutor and work on these problems. If you really work on them and you really understand them, they will form a core for you, a foundation in the next topic, which is on functions, and then after that on more on loops and stuff. Okay. The next problem is to write a Python program that will reverse a string. Okay. Now there's different ways of doing it, by the way. So if you go hit the internet for a program that does that, you're going to get different things. And I'm going to know that you didn't write it. Okay. So don't do that. The point here isn't about handing in and getting points. The point here is to learn how to do this stuff, right? So let me talk about that a second. Come on. Okay. Let's keep showing that. Preview. Okay. That's the wrong one. Here's number 2. Right? So you want to write it so that if you pass hello world, it will return the whole phrase, the whole string backwards, right? Whatever that backwards looks like. Okay. So what do you want to do? Same thing. Notice in here that I actually, oh, you can't see that. It's not being shared, is it? Wow. Okay. Let's see if I can share. Oh, no, that's not what I want to share. I got kicked out of my session, by the way, just so you know, on my other computer. Okay. Okay, so again, you'll notice that I have phrase equals input. So you get a string from that line. And then I have reversed underscore phrase equals an empty string again. So you're going to use that variable to concatenate each letter backwards, right? So how you concatenate matters is what I'm going to say, right? So, but again, you're going to loop. Remember that a string is a sequence, so you can use that. And I gave you an example yesterday in class, by the way. All right. So it's a matter of looping over the string, over the elements or the characters in the string, and then concatenate them in the right way so that the whole string comes out reversed. Okay. Any questions on this? None? Going once, going twice. Make sure to get with a tutor to help you through these skill builders, okay? All right, guys, have a good day.